The monsters were back. Tall, ugly things. Their skins hung loosely in great big wrinkles, and covered in odd spots of colour. In a way, they looked like trees covered in dense moss. The way they moved, it looked as if they had branches stuck inside of their limbs. It was all jerks and falling, only to shift just enough to remain upright. Strangest of all, both of the monsters had a single massive eye on top of them. It was black and shiny, and didn't seem to be able to move on its own. They had to turn their entire bodies in order to look anywhere. But that eye must have been powerful, because one of them turned and looked right at me. It was impossible. I was nestled among the dense fronds of a bush, and I was a master at blending. That gaze, though, I could feel it. This wasn't some coincidence. It could see me. My fears were confirmed a moment later, when it extended one limb to point right at me. I was frozen. If it could see me, what else could it do? Would it be fast enough to catch me if I bolted? These monsters looked ungainly balanced on just two limbs, but could they actually outpace me? I was still paralyzed with indecision when one of them spoke. "Hey, come over here." The words were strange, flat. Their cadence faltered, and they lacked emotion. It spoke again. "It's all right. We're friends. Really." Once more, the words were recognizable, just wrong. Neither monster made any move to come after me. They just watched. Could a monster speak? Were they actually monsters? Or were they just tricky? I had never heard of talking monsters, but maybe no one who met them ever returned. Eventually, curiosity won out over sense. I extended a tentacle and hesitantly poured myself in the brush. At the same time, I let my blending fade. The mottled red and brown camouflage shifted back into my usual blue and orange spots. It was a beautiful pattern, if I was being honest. I had worked long months on it, making sure every whirl and dot was perfect. These beings, though, they remained impassive. Perhaps they were embarrassed at the shameful state of their own hides. "What are you?" I asked. "You're not one of the people, but you speak our language. Badly, but you speak it." The one who had spoken first replied, "We're not of your people, but we're like you." That was insane. "You are nothing like us." "No," the maybe not monster admitted. "Not on the outside, but I'm pretty sure we think alike." I flicked a mouth tentacle in acknowledgement. It certainly didn't sound like a monster. Not one of the people either, but not some uncaring predator. That didn't stop me from keeping one tentacle on my flint knife as I eased forward. "You were here many seasons ago." I remembered it well. None of the tribe believed me. I had been young then, but not that young. The speaker made some bobbing motion with its eye. "We were." "Why?" The two not people turned to each other. The motion looked strange, graceless, like something inside was fighting them. Finally, the speaker answered. "We wanted to learn about you." "Why?" I repeated. Its upper limbs rose and fell. "It is what we do. We try to learn about many things." "But why?" They looked at each other again. The so far silent one seemed to shake. Both of them moved their limbs. I got the sudden insight that they were somehow speaking without words. A dozen heartbeats passed before the silent one turned and stumbled away. but the first returned his unblinking gaze to me. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Again, I hesitated. "What?" "Something that will answer your question, and then we'll return here. You'll be safe, I promise." It had already had a number of chances to do me harm, and I had come this far. What was a little further? I fluttered my mouth tentacles once more. "I will come." The being led the way through the brush and trees, along the trail his fellow had left. For something so inherently unsteady, it moved rather easily. A few times it pushed off and seemed to fly, without a single limb rooted to the ground below. I was sure it would fall, but every single time it caught itself, and continued forward in an uncoordinated stumble. We soon reached the edge of a clearing that I did not recognize. This was the edge of the tribe's territory, true, but I knew the land well enough to be sure that it had changed since I last passed. I peered closer, then closer still. When I saw it, I flattened myself in utter shock. A beast of gargantuan proportions had blended itself so perfectly as to be truly invisible. Only where its edges met the ground was there the faintest distortion. "Look out!" I hissed to my companion, but it was oblivious. Even as a maw large enough to swallow it whole opened wide, it made no move to escape. "There is no danger," it insisted. It is a conveyance we use to travel." When I did not approach, the knot person leaned into the invisible beast and thumped its side with an upper limb. The sound was like a drum, but deeper. Nothing like the slap of hide. "You have it very well trained," I ventured. "Something like that," it agreed. "Now, are you coming?" I was about to agree when my guy stepped right into the beast's gaping maw. That was too far. "You're letting it eat you?" This was it. This was the trap. I edged backwards, preparing my escape. But the maybe monster just stood there, well inside of the beast's mouth. "It's not going to eat you," it insisted. "Think of it like a big, moving cave, instead of a creature." "A cave?" "Yes, with a door. Watch." The giant mouth closed, then opened again. The odd being that had guided me here was unharmed. "See?" "This is insane." It made the same eye-bobbing motion from before. "I can see how you would think that. But hurry, my partner is already mad about this, and I don't want to give him an excuse to leave us." "He would do that?" "No, but he'd threaten to. Already is, in fact." It tapped the side of its eye, which made an odd clacking sound, sort of like ice on stone. Once again, I felt like I had no choice. If they meant me harm, I would see my ancestors soon, one way or another. But if they didn't, and I left... I entered the maw of the great beast. Inside was strange. My guide was right. It was like a cave. Dry and solid, but lit like the day. Spots of glowing colors covered the walls, along with sharp-lined protrusions. When the door shut, I had a moment of panic. But before I could more than twitch, a section turned invisible, revealing the world outside. Now, this is going to get very strange. Even up close, it was unclear where the words were coming from. This creature didn't seem to have breathing slits, not unless they were well hidden. "Strange," I replied. "It already has become more than strange." "Friend, you haven't seen anything yet." With that cryptic statement, it tapped something on the cave wall, and the ground outside fell away. My body went jet black. "I'm dead," I whispered, as I ascended into the heavens. It had been a mistake after all. I was going to join my ancestors, and no one would know what had happened to me. "You're not dead." The assurance startled me, and I jerked to look at my guide. It was staring down at me, still there, and as I looked at myself, I realized that I was as well. "I'm just showing you the answer to why we do what we do." It went on. "That will just take a little trip." We continued to rise, faster than birds, higher than clouds, but I barely felt a tremor, only the faintest hum. "Are you gods?" I whispered. "No." A faint noise came from the thing's eye, almost muffled. After a few moments, the noise ceased, and it continued. "No, not even close. And before you ask, we don't know any gods. We're just like you, only older." "Then how? How does age do this?" "That's part of the answer to your question," it answered. Somehow, the flat words managed to feel gentle. "We learn so we can push just a little bit further. And if you learn enough, if you push enough, you eventually get here." The ground was long gone. It had been replaced with a ball of brown and red and blue and white, a ball of indescribable size. I felt a visceral need to dig my tentacles into the ground, except the hard cave floor resisted my every effort. "Do you see now? Do you see why?" I could hardly breathe enough to answer. This was the view of the dead, and ascended. But I wasn't dead. "I don't know," was all that I finally managed. It bobbed his eye, a motion that I had come to realize was a sort of acknowledgement. "I get it. This view, it never gets old. No matter how many times I see it across dozens of worlds, you would think that after all this time, it would get old. But it doesn't. Someday, this view will belong to you, too. Your people, your children's 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 children will arrive here, to look down on the same view you're seeing right now." "How?" The words slipped out, as I stared at what I could just vaguely understand was my home, so far below, and so close that I could almost touch it. "Well?" The person who was not a person began. "All you need to do is to keep asking why."